we have two big patterns. We have a pattern which is more easy, to be able for a player to create a push. So can play in push draw, he could play in push straights, or you have another pattern where the player is able to play more in pull and create most of the time or a pull straights or a pull fade, but in 90% more a pull fade, not so much player playing in pull straights. I can tell you the left side is not something they like. So understanding the signature, and that's the things we can follow, with the force plates. We know that at the start of the downswing, we are not all different. Some players, they like to have a body motion which is coming more from inside to out, and some other have a pattern where clearly, it's very easy, it's very natural for them to go from outside to in. So like you can see here on the screen, we are able, to put these people on solutions that will make this pattern more easy for them to play with. But for sure, the good players need to play on both sides. We have so much example. If you have a swing like Patrick Reed, he has a great push drawer trace and a push drawer signature. For sure, Dustin Johnson, has totally, the opposite, like Maria Fassi, you can see in the screen below. But all of them, they need, to play, and they need to work with the two directions. So understanding how the force, will how to apply the force, on the force plate or on the ground, will help them, to create, the difference we want to see, in their signature. What we have been seeing that, generally speaking, most of the pull fader, they have, the release is not so much in the hands, it's really with the body, and everything is turning around, and they have some very strong hands, and we really can't see, in pull fader, releasing of the hand. It's really a position of the weight. The force will be engaged on the front of the right foot, the back of the left foot, and everything at the peak of the speed, like you can see, happens on the hips. The peak of acceleration of the hips will happen really at impact. Where with push drawer, what we can see is that the peak of acceleration of the hips happen just before impact, means that they are slowing down and keep really, the right foot very steady, very stable, to be able, to have a lot of room in the end, just before the impact, and able, to release the hand. So if I could say, generally speaking, what we can see on the force plates, a pull fader is working with a distribution of the weights, which is maybe sometimes similar, to the push drawer, but where they applied, the force, on the ground to start the motion, it's more in the front of the right foot and the back of the left heel for a puller, and in the front of the left foot and the back of the right heel for a pusher. So these two big differences will be linked with a pose, which is going to be more important on the pusher, what we can see, on our force plates. And something also very important is the position of the ball. Like you can see with our force plates, we are able, to know where is positioning the ball versus where are exactly positioning the foot. Knowing that helps us to see that there is a very big impact on positioning the ball versus positioning your foot. If you move the ball from 1 centimeter on any direction, it will have an impact in the way your center of mass and the way the force applied on your body by the grounding will be modified. We can talk in more details in the future about that, but it's very important when you work with force plates to know exactly where are positioning the ball, because by changing the position of the ball, you may have some modification in the quality of the geometry of the displacement of the club head, and so you will have some difference in the way you are able to shape the ball and to create what your signature should certainly be able to create. So when we talk about optimizing the performance of a golfer, it's very important each time to understand what causes the movement. So the cause of the movement comes by understanding how the force applied on the ground will start to engage muscle, which creates the kinematics of the motion of your swing. So the cause will create the motion, so you will know what is the geometry which is going to be optimal for your swing, and how this geometry of your swing will be able to respect a good geometry of your club head during the swing. So how do we play with what our pioneer we mentioned just before, Leonardo da Vinci, Giovanni Borelli, and Isaac Newton has been conceptualized and created. So when you look at a human body, how are you able to understand what is the manual to create a movement? So when we want to create a movement, our computer, our central computer, our brain receives some information from the sensors, which are essentially for the movements in our muscle, in our joints, and in our bone. So to be able to play with these sensors, these sensors will be activated by movement, by contraction, by action, will act on the tendons, the joints, and the muscle. Saying that, it's important to understand if this muscle will be engaged in motion. That's why it's very important to understand what is the posture. So when we talk about posture, we are taking in consideration the skeleton, the muscle, and the tendons, who will be able to maintain a certain position, a certain shape of the body. What's important for us when we are working with the players is to be able to understand every time we see him. So fortunately, if we see him every day, or if when we are on the tour, on the physio unit, we are also checking that. It's important to understand what is the posture of the day. All the muscles from the back are in tension, means that your posture will be maintaining by an engagement, a contraction, an automatic contraction from the calf, the hamstring, the glutes, the muscle from the back, and the muscle from the cervical. So what's happened on the other side? The abs, the quad, the tibialis anterior, they're going to be weak. When we are swinging, what's important is to be able, to maintain the center of gravity the more stable possible. In the past, we know that great champion like Sally Ballesteros, has been able, to make some huge victories by moving quite a lot in their foot, but they were able to have a tremendous tempo, a tremendous synchronization to do that. When we have been arriving in the year 2000 and having all these different systems, we start in 1998. To work in the US with David Ledbetter and a big task of this big task force, including Justin Rose, Westwood Poulter, Ernie Els. With all these players, we have been starting to understand what makes the difference on each of these players. And I've been also been able to see what are the parameters that was the same in all these players when they were at their optimal. If we can say, certainly the most important quality all these players have was the quality to have a very good posture. the way they were able, to maintain, a physiological posture. And for sure, I've been able, to design some solution to maintain that. That's why, with the force plate, actually, with the one we use, the Biomechanics force, it's including a way to understand the posture of each players. When the players start to be under fatigue, so you understand that you have muscle, more muscle will be engaged, essentially the muscle from the back, and the muscle from the front that are going to be weak. Taking that in consideration, you understand that what helps our central computer, our brain, to optimize and to be able, to synchronize our motion is the quality you will have, to get information from the sensors you have in your body. Talking about that, if the sensors are not able to be stimulated because the muscles are too much in contraction or the muscles are too much weak, you will not be able to have information that your brain is able, to play with. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but that's why it's very important to maintain a good posture with the physiological engagement of all your muscle. What's great in golf, you create a coil, you create, energy, through the backswing, thanks to the force you will apply on the ground. So the energy is coming back by a very strong coiling, and you release, this energy through the downswing. So you use all the muscle of the body in all the direction. So saying that, you need to have all the muscle able to be stretched, able to be contracted. So need to work really in sync, in coordination all together. So when you look at what's happened on the force plates, we have two things which are very important to understand if a player is at this top. It's essentially the way he's able, to maintain a good posture. So we have that, at the start. But also, the way he's able, to optimize the core compression force. When you have a player who starts to be under fatigue, this core compression force start to go down or start to be used at a different moments than the one it should be used, versus, the impact. That's why on our force plates, when we work with the kinematics, with the different kind of sensors we use for the motion, to be able, to track at what moments, the core compression force will be engaged. It's going to be difference in between a puller and a pusher. But what is very important, it needs to be very approach of the impacts. So you can see here the different algorithms which are able to give you the intensity of this force and also where it will be applied versus the impacts. When we talk about that, we also talk about what happens somewhere after the year 2000 is, and because we are using more and more system, to be able to understand the kinematics and the kinetics, it has been something very important to understand that the more simple swing will be a swing around a more stable axe. Means that you can move for sure, but if you move, you need to have a very great tempo. So tempo is going to be important, and once again, we have the quality, to calculate the tempo of your swing, and we can see, that if there is something very crucial in a swing, is the quality you have to maintain the weight the more centered possible. That's why if you are able to apply two opposite force on each foot which goes on an opposite direction, you will be able to maintain a center of rotation the more stable possible. Means that if you are going too much backwards or too much frontwards, it will have an action on disbalancing this axe of rotation. Why this axe of rotation is important for us? Because it will protect the body of each of our players. The less you have shear force applied from the ground to the upper body, the more you will be protected. So the more you are able to coil on around the fixed axe, the better it will be. When we talk about that, we are able for sure to discuss different philosophy in the golf swing. So what we are doing here in the center of Terre Blanche, we are receiving coach players from different directions, coming with different. We have guys who make the stack and tilt. We have in the past some more Norman golfer, before the Chambeau with this big grape and so on. We have different direction, and what we are able to say is the direction you want to achieve. Is it possible with your body or not? And what we are doing, we are not forcing people to go in a direction. We just want to adapt the law of the biomechanics, the law of the physiology, the law of the mechanic of the club to your body. That's why the signature is very important, and that's why the modern pattern you are able to create is very important to understand.